As much as you can think that you can use a smartphone or even a tablet to do everyday tasks, there are some tasks that cannot be done on either of these devices. You either need a PC or, on the other side of the spectrum, a Mac, which is exactly what I'm going to be talking about today, after I'm going to be talking about this 2020 MacBook Air. Now, before I can talk about the 2020 MacBook Air, I want to bring up this guy first, because this is my previous MacBook. This is the 2015 MacBook Air with the glorious glowing Apple logo. Also with this old design with the white bezels and the old aluminum frame, the unibody frame, by the way. This really used to be the MacBook that a ton of people would go to when it came down to buying either a used or a brand new Mac that could be basically everything. This was one of the best options when it came down to MacBooks. But then a couple of years ago, back in 2018, Apple refreshed the MacBook with this new design, which this is the 2020 M1 MacBook Air, also known as the very first MacBook Air with Apple's silicone. I ended up buying this MacBook from Walmart a couple weeks ago on May 1st for the price of $700, and yeah, it's in glorious gold. Oh God, Jesus Christ. As you can see, it's beautiful. There are some things I do have to talk about first, which is gotta be the reviewing part. Let's talk about the design first. This does have the newer design, close to the MacBook Pros and the MacBook of like 2015 and 2016. This is a very nice little computer, and I mean, yes, it may be very thin and only have a few ports like USB-C, which technically is Thunderbolt 4, which is kind of crazy, but then also a headphone jack, which is awesome for the fact that the MacBook has a headphone jack, but the iPhone doesn't. The design of this is very nice. It's without a doubt one of the nicest designs out there. Let's open this guy up to actually look at what would be the main part of the actual laptop itself, which is the screen, keyboard, and trackpad, and along with speakers. The keyboard itself is a Magic keyboard. It's not the butterfly keyboard that ended up being more or less a failure. I mean, I actually think that this keyboard is really nice. The trackpad is a lot bigger against the 2015 MacBook Air, and it's a force touch trackpad, which means you can basically click anywhere on the trackpad and pretty much click anywhere without having issues. I'll get to the screen in a second. The speakers themselves are beautifully well done. The MacBook Air 2015 did have speakers integrated in the keyboard, which was fine, but these just generally sound better than that. I mean, even especially when the fact that it's not under the keyboard itself. Another thing which I also want to say before getting to the screen is this also has Touch ID in it, in the actual keyboard itself where the power button used to be, and that is a great security feature. Nice job, Apple. As you can see, as Kevin Parker is on my screen, this is a Retina display by 2560 to 1600, which is a massive step up against the other MacBook Airs beforehand, especially with the older series from 2015 and 2017. And actually, it's very bright too, like very, very bright, as you can see from that. Without a doubt, it's definitely a display that I think should have been on the MacBook a long time ago. Are you kidding me? The webcam itself is fine. It's at 720p, which is not necessarily great for a MacBook at this price, but I mean, it works for conferencing calls. This is the baseline MacBook Air as well, which is 256 gigabytes of storage, 8 gigabytes of RAM, the normal M1 chip, which is pretty much as nice as it could be, and also no fans. Why did I have to mention that? Because this has no fan in it. It's the very first one with Apple's chip, Apple silicone. This thing is fast, definitely fast. It's had a few moments where it's heated up a little bit, not that bad, but I mean, it's not terrible. It's one of those things which is very rare though. It's very rare to have it warm up like sometimes, but I mean, it's great. Funny thing which I want to bring up about necessarily the MacBook series is the previous MacBook Air, which came out in early 2020, had overheating issues. Actually came with the Intel i3, i5, and i7, which is kind of not great. The early 2020 MacBook Air did not have a great cooling system at all. In fact, it overheated if you were trying to do heavy tasks at any cost, which was not great. This pretty much goes as far as being not only powerful, but also power efficient, which is great because if your computer dies from a heat stroke, then it's like the last thing you want to have is lose your files. this won't really do that in most cases. I mean, sometimes it probably will under heavy loads, but most of the time you're not going to be doing many heavy loads. This probably can run with Final Cut Pro editing 4K video as well. Battery life is massive as well. It has 18 hours battery life, brand new. And I mean, this battery has been working great. I've been having to charge it a few times, but since like I first got it, it's been very few times I've had to charge it. So that's great, especially with the M1 chip in it. It's very, very nice, not only for the size, but also just the chip itself, the battery life. It's big. It's a massive thing. I mean, yes, the storage is very low. It's pretty much the base model. But honestly, if I can get this open, this is pretty much the nicest computer that you can get for $700. I mean, it's pretty much better than majority of Windows machines. Even higher end ones that go above this guy. Let me explain that part. I know it's unfair to compare a full-blown gaming PC against a MacBook that is pretty much half the RAM, half the storage of this guy, and also doesn't have a dedicated graphics card in it. That's a big one. This also has an Intel i5, a 3050 in it, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and also 512 gigabytes of storage. I have to say that this has to be one of the least power efficient computers I could ever use. Even on a Discord call, this thing is blowing hard, even with like just being on a Discord call, like one-on-one Discord call. That is surprising. Another thing which I will also say that this thing is awful during co-op games. Lethal Company or Content Warning, this thing cannot stay on Wi-Fi with either of those games, even though they are literally the least powerful games ever to play on this computer, but somehow this thing can't even do it. And let me say, during streaming, it doesn't work with Lethal Company or Content Warning or Poppy's Playtime. I can't stream a high quality game on YouTube Live with this laptop. I honestly really didn't want to refilm this bit again, which is kind of surprising for the fact that the sunlight's not hitting this the same way as yesterday. But this thing I needed to refilm again because I need to say this is worse. This thing is worse than my 2020 MacBook Air in power efficiency. It is powerful for sure, but not great at all for the fact that it can't play co-op games without disconnected Wi-Fi, not even having and also the streaming thing is also through internet as well. It should have been reliable, and also cannot actually keep itself cool even during a one-on-one Discord call. Personally, I would love to be able to stream off of this MacBook and everything. Maybe at some point I'll try to figure out a way to be able to get it to work, but I mean, I'll try to figure it out. Again, unfair comparison, but it still proves somewhat of my point. Basically, majority of machines that are basically gonna go against this guy in price are basically not only cheaper, but also are not gonna be as good in basically the storage and also the processors. They're not gonna be quite as nice as this guy because, I mean, even though, yes, this is pretty much the base model MacBook Air, it is still way better than majority of the machines that you could probably pay for the same price. Not only power efficiency, but the powerful processor that is in this guy. The thinness is one thing. It's a 13-inch laptop, which you can throw in your bag. It's not gonna feel like it's gonna break. It feels like it's gonna last for years, even though this guy was released 3 years ago. I know that pretty much people are gonna say just buy an older MacBook, even though yes, this is cheaper, and yes, majority of companies nowadays which are refurbishing tech are gonna charge lower prices for this. If you're needing a new machine, buy the M1 MacBook Air. The MacBook Air is just gonna be better in the processor, the power efficiency. Yes, USB-C is the only port on this guy besides the headphone jack, but pretty much every single accessory has USB-C nowadays, so it's not like it's gonna be much of an issue. Great computer. If you need a computer that's cheap, $700 cheap, this would be a really good option. And also this was the last gold one that they had in stock in my Walmart, so it's like, great screen, great keyboard, great trackpad, amazing speakers, not like amazing by like a standard of like, oh, against higher end like sound systems, but it's good in this laptop, especially for $700. Pretty thin, unfortunately no glowing Apple logo. Please bring it back. Thin laptop that is 13 inches, mostly can throw into a bag, and is amazing. I've been daily driving this MacBook Air for a couple of weeks now, and I find it amazing. Against this guy, I mean, this guy was great, but it needed to be retired, at least from majority of the stuff that I was doing. So I want to say thumbs up. So I want to say thank you guys so much for watching. The MacBook is probably gonna be running Final Cut Pro in a few weeks. Comment, like, and subscribe. I'll see you guys later when I basically review Ryan Gosling's car in Drive. Or actually, I'm gonna probably talk about Fall Guy first. Whether or not, I mean, honestly, I probably will talk about Fall Guy first. Bye!